there's another one. Oh, it's loaded in here. Ladies and gents, welcome to Fishing Gurus Volume 3, Ringer vs Bennett, the Battle Royale Part 2, here at Weston Pools Fisheries. And yes, it is a bit of a mouthful, but it's befitting to the two gladiators in match fishing that last year put on an absolutely epic and very tight match that literally less than a fish separated them. So we thought it was only fair that we'd give Bennett one more crack at the champ over 2 matches on 2 completely different venues, this one being the first. So without further ado, let's go and meet the guys.
Beating Andy twice last year was more than I could have hoped for, but I did feel like the venues in Makins and Partridge, being carp based, they gave me a chance and both matches were tight, so they went to the wire. Luckily they went my way. I'm not sure today's going to be as easy.
I felt a little bit unlucky last year, sort of like the wrong side of the scales, so hopefully this year the luck goes in my favour. Taking him on obviously is going to be hard as always, but you know, 1 or 2 fish here or there could change the outcome, so fingers crossed I can at least get 1 win against him.
So chaps, another day, another dollar, another brand new venue. How are we feeling after last year? Steve, you won it.
I won it, but only just, so anything can happen.
It was a slim margin. Bennett, afterwards, you did say there was a few things that you could have done better.
Yeah.
Are you going to implement them in these next 2 matches?
I think this will be a little bit different,
Yeah.
so I do a lot more of this type of fishing, so hopefully I won't make as many errors as I'll be able.
Have you left any stones unturned?
Possibly, but we'll see today.
Steve, you've done a little bit of practice.
1 sneaky practice, which didn't do my confidence a lot of good. This is what Andy does, so to beat him at his own game, I'm going to have to do something a little bit different, I think.
I've got to say actually, ladies and gents, that last year, the 2 days we spent on the bank with me watching these two was one of my highlights of last year, so I'm really looking forward to this. Less talking, more action, guys. We have to do the coin toss for the swims, all right? You won, so you can call it. Heads or tails, mate?
Heads.
Oh, heads it is. Which one do you want?
This is the thing now. Andy's like bluffed me. The one I wanted before we started. Andy,
You're getting in your own head, man.
Yeah, Andy said he didn't want, but I'm going to go with it anyway, so I'll take 7 to 17.
Right, so that leaves you
21.
Right,
So
guys.
he's happy, and I'll probably drop the clanger.
Right, you've got an hour to set up. May the best man win. This is the first of 2 epic matches, I'm sure, ladies and gents. Guys, good luck.
Cheers.
Taking Andy on today is going to be really, really difficult. There's a lot of F1s in here. I used to fish for F1s. I spent a lot of time at Tunnel Barn. And at one point, probably 8-10 years ago, I felt, without being big-headed, I was as good as anyone at this type of fishing. But those days are gone now. I've concentrated a lot on feeder. That said, there are some carp in here. And if I can make them play ball, I've still got a chance.
The feedback from last year was really good. Obviously, when we first did the series, it was a little bit of a friendly thing, but then once sort of 20, 30 people have come up to you and they've said sort of like, oh, I can't believe you've let him beat you, Andy. Then all of a sudden it gives me that desire to sort of, right, I need to get my head on this and actually try and beat him. So yeah, this year I'm going to take it a lot more serious, hopefully.
Now then, Steve, if history's got anything to go by, you won the toss on the first match last year, you've just won the toss today. You picked 17, why?
To be honest, I don't know the venue at all. I practiced a couple of days before. I actually fished Andy's peg.
Right.
And I caught a stack of fish. There's a lot of fish in this lake.
Do you think it's quite a fair lake?
I think it is. I think it's a fair lake because there's only 2 of us on here.
Right.
So the fish, I think there's going to be a lot of fish caught.
Yeah.
The only reason I really chose this peg, the way I look at it, Andy's phenomenal at what he does.
Yeah.
I can't beat Andy copying him.
Right.
And my attitude is there's a lot of big F1s. If he fishes shallow back to back, I can fish shallow back to back and I'm pretty good at it.
Yeah.
But he's better, he does it all the time.
Right.
So I can't beat him copying him.
So that leads me into my second question. What is your plan? What's your plan A? What's your plan B? And also, second question, he's in your eye line. How much are you going to be watching him?
if I watch him, my head will disintegrate, literally disintegrate, because he's so good at what he does.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I just don't do. There's a lot of big F1s, that's Andy's forte.
So he's going to hit the, if he fishes that way and you both fish that way, you think he's going to hit the ground running, get into a rhythm quicker, and you're just not going to be able to keep up pace?
Yes, basically, because he does it 3-4 days a week, and I go feeder fishing. Like Tuesday was the first time I've been pole fishing in sort of 6 months.
And no point fishing in this place because it's 45, 50 foot deep.
Yeah, it's really deep out. The way I look at it, if Andy fishes shallow and I fish shallow, let's say hypothetical weights, he catches 180, I catch 140.
Right.
So he wins because he's a little bit smoother, a little bit faster. But if he fishes shallow and catches 180 and then I fish for carp, I do something a little bit different. I think there's a lot of carp to be caught very short.
So you are planning to do something a little bit different?
I don't want to fish shallow. If I have to fish shallow, half an hour in, I'm fishing shallow.
Well, he can't hear us, so what's your go-to? How are you going to start
My plan is I need to plumb it up to find out. The bottom on this lake is horrendous.
Right.
It's like potholes all over the place.
Right.
I want to find a nice flattish spot, sort of 5.5 foot deep, on a top kit.
Right.
Because it's deep, the fish are going to come really, really close.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking top kit, hemp and corn. Basically, keep it nice and tight. I'm going to pot everything because when I came in the week, if you throw any bait, they come at all different levels.
Right, yeah.
And you start foul looking, etc. Pot everything. Be a little bit more patient.
Yeah.
So if Andy fishes shallow, he's going to catch more in numbers than me. But what I'm hoping is I'll get some big F1s on the deck, but I'll get some 5, 6, 7, 8 pound carp as well. Nice. That's the plan.
Well,
if everything goes to plan, I'll be on a top kit and one, and you won't see any more pole.
And plan B is literally just fight fire with fire.
I'm going to feed shallow. I can't just give him it. You know what I mean? So like while I'm fishing my top kit, I'll throw some casters or pellets. I haven't quite decided which one I'm going to go with yet.
Right.
Probably casters, because I can throw them over a wider area. And you seem to get a bigger stamp of F1 on casters. So
how long do you think it's going to take to get them in the edge? Are they there already?
When I say top kit, I'm talking literally like a metre from the bank. And then I'm going to feed in this little hole down here. Ideally, they should be there I'd expect to bite within 2 minutes.
Christ.
And then it might be some carp. What I found with Andy's peg is on the short lake it's very silty, whereas this one's gravel, and that was the main reason I chose it. When I fished Andy's peg, the bottom blew up a little bit with silt, and I foul hooked a few. I'm hoping with a hard bottom, I can fish on the bottom. They're not going to get loads of silt. It'll be a lot cleaner, and I'll catch more fish as a result.
So in a nutshell, the bottom in the margins here suits your style of fishing better than that one.
That's how I feel, yeah. I might have called it totally wrong.
You might have done, but it makes sense to me right now, man. And I don't want to take up much more of your time. That is fascinating. I'm going to go and have a chat with Bennett as well right now, but I'll leave you to it. Good luck.
I'm going to need it.
Andy, you lost the toss, but it's a pretty fair venue from what I can gather. Are you happy we swim first off?
Yeah, I'm happy. I've got options, which is what I wanted. I've got shallow water, I've got whatever depth I want to fish coming off the bank, and then obviously open water. It's a very deep lake, so it's up to me now to try and find where the fish are, but I've got them options, so I'm happy.
Well, on paper, this suits your style of fishing a lot more than it suits Ringer, and actually, you might not have been to the venue recently, but you have fished it quite a lot in the past. So how do you see the match going?
I think there's a lot more carp now than there used to be. Or maybe not more, but they're bigger. I think it's going to be F1s for the first half of the match, and then I think the carp are that big. The last hour and a half, 2 hours, I think this match is going to be decided by carp personally.
So that dictates how you're going to fish it. Obviously, it kind of already sort of fits me in the head that you're going to go short and shallow first and then try and get them in the margins. Is that about right?
Yeah, exactly right. I'm going to start short, see if we can get a couple of early fish, then work my way out, try and keep ticking over, putting fish in the net. If that's good enough out there, I could end up doing that most of the day.
Yeah.
But there will become a point where I can only catch, say, 30, 40 pound an hour doing what I'm doing out there, whereas as soon as I come in the edge, that could be 6, 7 fish. So at some point, I'll be looking to either catch down the edge or catch close and catch some bigger fish. And I think that's where the match will be decided, personally.
Do you think a fast start is important?
No, not necessarily. A good finish will be better.
Right, okay, mate. Well, I'll leave you to it. You nearly set up, but you've still got a long way to go.
Cheers,
Best
Dean.
of luck, buddy.
Beating Andy Bennett today would be massive for me. Yes, I won 2-0 last year, but they were tight, literally like 1 or 2 fish at Makins and a couple of roach at Partridge. So making it 3-0 would make it a little bit more conclusive, if you know what I mean. And he can't come back from 3-0 either.
In terms of emotions, no, I don't feel any nerves or anxiety or anything like that. I'm used to fishing in high pressure situations, but you do get that sort of, I need to sort of win this, you know, when you come into these final hours of the match, it does get a little bit more tense and obviously everything gets a little bit more serious. But in terms of like nervousness before or any anxiety, no, it's another day's fishing, and you know, I think the more you fish in high pressure situations, the more you get used to it, I feel.
Well, ladies and gents, it's the time we've all been waiting for. Bennett, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Steve, are you ready?
Born ready.
5 hours, 2 of the best in the business. All in! It's gonna be exciting.
Hurts me. I'm 10 minutes into the match and I've had a couple of perch on that initial line. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to change my hook length now, switch it over to hard pellets rather than casters, one to try and avoid some of these perch and nuisance fish and hopefully try and get a quicker response. Then I might look to switch back to casters, but for now I'm going to switch it up and move to hard pellets.
After practicing, I knew that the platform to my right was my banker line, but I wanted a really fast start. So I started on a top kit, slightly to my right, but sort of in front of me, because I wanted to let that pallet line sort of settle, and that was the ace up my sleeve. Started on top kit in front of me, potting everything. What I'd found was in practice, if I threw bait, I tended to foul hook everything. So I wanted to pot in, come back, bait the hook, and then drop in over the top when it had all settled. And it worked really well to start with. On the bait front, I went with hemp and corn, very old school. I spoke to a few people who said, oh, feed dead maggots out your hand or even feed casters, but it was really deep, sort of 7, 8 foot. And it just didn't seem right feeding dead maggots in that depth. I foul hooked fish, I had problems with silvers, and the fish just didn't seem to want to settle. So I switched it to hard pellets in practice, and again, foul hooked a few, didn't seem great. Went to hemp and corn, and it was literally like throwing a light switch. And as soon as I clicked onto that, I thought I've got a real chance to beat Andy. The start of the match was a little bit slower than I wanted. I expected like a fish within seconds, but it took a few minutes to get a bite, but it was a better start than Andy had, and I felt like if I was going to win, I needed to get ahead of Andy and stay ahead.
I was talking to both guys before the match started, and what makes it fascinating for me, not just watching these two guys go at it, and they are the best in the business, is they're two completely different approaches with their attitude. Steve's a little bit more agitated, a little bit more anxious, and he needs that to get the best out of himself. Bagger is so relaxed, he could almost fall asleep standing up. It's like if I catch him, I do, if I don't, I don't, you know. I know which one I'd want to play poker against and which one I wouldn't want to play poker against. Both guys have started on the same line with different approaches. One's gone hard on the deck with natural baits, one's gone hard on the deck with bigger baits, hemp and corn. And Ringer, to be fair, his plan A has just come out of the blocks absolutely firing on all cylinders, whereas Bagger, not the best of starts. This is going to be interesting, this one.
The rig I'm using on this short line is dead simple. It's a carp style float, it's got a 2mm bristle, wire stem, slimish pattern, and I'm going to fish quite heavy elastic for this because if the carp do turn up, I'm going to get, you know, a lot of angry fish coming in my peg. So black hydro elastic, old 22 main line, so it's a proper carp rig, nice and durable. Coming down the rig itself, I've got it dead simple, a bulk 6 inches from the hook, and I have a 6-inch hook length as well. There's no need for droppers really. I'm going to be fishing big baits such as worms or 6-8mm pellets on the hook, so droppers don't really come into it. It's all about just having a really positive rig that I can lower into position, and hopefully it's sort of like a bagging rig if you like. So my hook length is going to be an 017 material of N gauge again, and that's going to be, you know, hopefully either a 14s SLWG if we're catching on worms, and then if not, I'm going to fish an SMWG in a size 16, so a little bit smaller hook but a little bit thicker in gauge. Nothing's going to really break that, and it's going to be very durable, so I can manage to land them carp if they turn up quick. So the switch from casters to pellets has worked a little bit. It's got me a couple of fish, but it's still not brilliant. I don't feel that's right as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start throwing casters there again for later in the match. The reason I'm going to do this is a lot more particles with casters. I can feed a little bit more aggressive, and I'm hoping that the fish will settle there a little bit later doing that. I just don't feel like I'm going to bag up feeding hard pellets there. So as you can see, I've been feeding that shallow line long. Hopefully there's going to be some fish out there. So what I'm going to do now, pop out onto that shallow line and hopefully try and put some fish in the net, because I feel like at this point I'm falling a little bit behind. I've gone out onto my shallow line, but it's not quite happening. I've had a few silverfish, so I don't feel like the fish have settled there properly, at least not at a depth that I want to be catching them or expected to catch them at. So what's going through my head now is a couple of things. Am I feeding heavy enough to draw the fish in? Am I feeding too heavy that I'm pushing the fish down? Do I need to cut my feed back and try and make them compete and bring them up? What you've got to be careful of here is if you don't feed enough, you won't attract the fish. Feed too much, you can push them a little bit deeper. So it's finding that balance, what they want on the day. And then it's finding the depth. The depth is how high the fish are willing to come to compete and how high they'll come towards that surface to intercept your bait. So I'm going to be switching rigs up from my little Dibber rig to my strung out rig, just trying to find where the fish are, and if I can sort of gauge like a little zone, if you like, whether it be a foot deep, 2 foot deep, 3 foot deep, wherever that little zone is, they're intercepting that bait, then I can work out what the best rig is. Do I want a bulk rig? Do I want a strung out rig? Slow falling, lifting and dropping, Is it better to slap? All these things are going through my head, but at the moment, I just don't feel like the fish are quite settled. So all the time that I'm feeding that shallow line, while it's not working, I'm constantly feeding this short line, so I've got a backup plan. This might end up being the best line today, so you know, don't put all your eggs into one basket. That's why I'm feeding that long line and this short line all the time, so at any point I can drop back in on that. The shallow line's not really took off how I expected. The fish are not quite there yet. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to come back in on this short line where I've been loose feeding casters. Hopefully a few fish have settled on that. But I'm also going to make a decision to start putting some ground bait and corn in my edge, just to see whether the fish want to be in the shallow water. They're not out on that shallow line long yet, so maybe they want to be shallow water down the edge on the bottom instead of up in the water. So just because I've not caught shallow out long on my caster line doesn't mean to say that I won't catch in my edge. The fish could be all near the bank, so I'm going to feed that a little bit earlier than anticipated. I didn't really want to feed that till halfway through the match, but I'm going to start putting bait in there now, and being so shallow I'll be able to see them if they come in anyway.
I've moved to the pallet line and it's definitely a lot better. I think the bottom is the really important part. But it's hard, the fish are settled, but also I've had to tweak my feeding. Like I said, in practice, potting was key. Pot the bait in, come back in, bait, go back over the top when they're settled. Today, it's just not working. It's like I've not pulled enough fish with a pot, maybe not making enough noise. So feeding twice by hand, so I'm almost picking up a big handful of hemp, handful of corn, throwing them in, and the bites are totally different. Half the amount of indications and proper bites, and literally, I feel like if it keeps going like this, I'm gonna take some beating.
Stevie, I've been trying to look for an opportune moment to come in, mate, and you haven't really left us much time because we spoke just before the match started about your plan, and to be fair, you couldn't have hit the ground running better, right?
I had a brilliant start, but then it petered out a lot quicker than I expected.
Right.
And then obviously Andy went shallow and he was like a windmill. And like, I'd go shallow and it was all right, but I can't beat him shallow.
No. It's interesting because actually watching both of you when you was fishing shallow, you're doing exactly the same thing, but slightly different. How are you feeling right now? Because every time you come in the edge here, it seems to be one a bung.
To be honest,
and good fish too.
The platform was my banker,
right?
But I didn't want to come on it this early, but Andy forced me, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Because I felt like I probably had a £20 start, but then Andy took it back again on F1s.
Do you think? I mean, where do you see yourself sitting right now? Obviously, you've had like 5 or 6 in.
I'd say it's pretty tight again now.
Really?
I'd say he took the lead, but the only good thing, well, not a good thing, but like, I've noticed I've forced him down the edge now as well.
Right.
But that platform should offer me enough cover, and it's deep and it's really hard bottom.
Yeah.
So if they keep coming there, they're much bigger fish.
How are you feeling right now? Like, perfect start.
Perfect.
What's your mentality going into the second half of the match?
Perfect start. I've done a little bit of everything. Now I feel like I'm on my banker line.
Yeah.
It's just, if that holds up, then I think I've got a realistic chance of beating him.
Oh, buddy.
If I have to go back shallow, and he goes back shallow, I think then he wins, if you know what I mean.
So at the moment, shallow is your plan C?
Shallow's just a tick over.
Yeah.
when I can't catch on anything else.
Right, okay, mate.
I can't see. I've got an edge to my left behind you, but it doesn't seem to be loads of fish between me and Andy, if you know what I mean.
Right.
And I've seen a few. I've seen a few come in that little hole.
Yeah.
There.
Now, how long are you going to leave it?
I've had a quick look down like there. There's been a few coming in there, but they're not settling.
All right.
The difference is there's a nice depth where I'm fishing now.
Yeah. Well, I'll leave you to it, mate. Yeah, best lay plans and all that, because to be fair, I think you're a tough man to beat right now in the position you're in.
We'll see, Andy's starting to get a few down that edge now.
Yeah, he is. All right, buddy.
All right.
Good luck.
Cheers, mate.
Rig choice for today reflects that the carp in clay pit, they're not massive, but they're long, lean fighting machines. So it's 0.6 gram Mick Wilkinson diamond, which might seem quite heavy for the depth I'm fishing in, but I wanted stability and I wanted a really strong float, and that's exactly what a diamond is. Something else that's important is the tip. Nice thick tip, allowed me to leave a little bit of show, getting a lot of liners, etc. So I wanted to be able to read the bites a little bit better. Main line, 019 N gauge to a 6-inch hook length 019, same diameter. I use the same diameter, which some might find a little bit odd, but because of the connection as in the loop to loop, if you're going to get a breakage, it's always going to be on the hook length just because it's a shorter length. Hook choice, size 14 XS spade, really strong, wide gape hook, perfect for baits like corn and catching a lot of fish. Lastly, shotting pattern, strong bulk. That's my favourite shotting pattern of all time. I made a little change though. Normally I'd go for shot, but because I'm expecting to catch a lot of fish, I've gone for cubes. The reason being, I'm fishing near the platform, my line is going to come into contact with the wood every now and again, and cubes move a lot easier. I don't want shot pinging off all over the place because it takes time to replace them. And if my line does catch the sort of wood on the platform, etc., I want the shot to move, which is going to almost prevent the line from breaking. So in this scenario, I think cubes are a great option. Something else which is really important with this type of fishing is elastic choice. Red Hydro is my elastic choice. Just allows me to land the fish a little bit quicker, a little bit more control, particularly around the wood, as in fishing against the platform. And when I'm looking for a big weight, like I think I'm going to need today to beat Andy, it gives me that little bit of an edge.
So with shallow not being great, what I did is I come back on that short line and that wasn't great either. But what I did spot is as soon as I put some bait in the margins, the ground bait, the fish was instantly onto it. Now, being so clear, I could see the fish and they weren't settling great, but every time I fed it, they were straight onto it. So I thought maybe if I fish it, they'll come back in. So I made the decision to sack that short line because I felt like it could be stopping some fish coming in margins. And I had a quick look in the margin, had a little quick run of fish and then nothing again. So it's a case now of feeding that margin line, jumping back out on that shallow line, hopefully there's some fish out there, and now I've sort of made my mind that it's going to be a two-pronged attack, so margin and shallow, because I just don't feel that short line is going to catch me enough fish. So I've gone back out onto this shallow line now, and all of a sudden you can tell the fish are there. I'm starting to see signs of fish. I can see an odd swirl. You can see the fish rising up, and that's typical of F1s. What you do when you're fishing F1s is you loose feed your bait, and you can't always see it, but on this venue, because it's so clear, you can see the fish actually rise up. So what happens is you're trying to make your rig as natural as possible. So the two main rigs that I used was a Dibber style float and the AR style float. Now I'll talk you through the Dibber rig first. That was basically white hydro elastic, 017 main line, The dibber itself is a 2 number 10 dibber, so it only takes 2 number 10 shot, really, really light. Carbon stem version. This is really important because when you slap your rig, you want your rig to follow it, and that's what carbon allows. That was just bolt down on top of the hook length knot, and then my hook length was 3 inches of old 13 N gauge to a 16s SLWG, and I finished that off with a little bait band. The reason I use a bait band is because I was hair rigging my caster. The AR was my deeper rig, so anything from sort of 14 inches to 2 foot deep, and that was in a 0.1 of a gram version. Again, I had white hydroelastic for this rig. It's 017 mainline. The AR, obviously, it features a little carbon stem, which again is great for fishing on the drop, great for fishing with maggots, casters, things like that. Moving down the actual rig itself, I had 2 number 10 shots, but I had 1 number 10 underneath the float to help it settle, and then I had 1 number 10 down the line. Now, the reason I do this is because a little bit less resistance. If you've got 2 number 10s down your line, it falls a little bit quicker. If you've got 1 down your line, it falls a little bit slower. So I mix that up depending on how many fish I think are there. And obviously I set 2 of these up just to cover different depths. So one was sort of set at 16 inch, one was sort of set around about 2 foot. Hook length wise, exactly the same as my dibber rig, old 13 N gauge to a 16s SLWG, again with a little bait band because I'm going to be fishing a hair rig caster on that.
Mate, you are an absolute machine up in the water. Steve definitely can't live with you, but Steve had a blinding start short, mate, and it didn't seem like your line, when you fished it short, kicked off quite the same.
No, I started on casters. I think Steve started on pellet. I switched to pellet and caught a couple, but I sort of missed that first 20-30 minute start, really. Steve had a couple of big fish.
Yeah. How does that make you feel? Like I know you said when we spoke before the match that, you know, pretty much going to be the last 2 hours that dictates it, but
yeah,
you know, a start like that, it must make you sink a little bit.
Yeah, you don't want to get off to a bad start, but like I said to you before, Dean, it's whoever finishes, you know, it's how you finish strong, which is going to matter.
Yeah.
I feel like I've already had a couple of fish in my edge.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm going to catch there late, possibly some big fish. I can catch F1 shallow. Can't really catch on that close line that Steve's catching on, so just got to fish your peg for what it's worth.
Yeah, so you literally think that down the edge and long up in the water is your 2 options now?
Yeah, I mean, I will keep feeding that short line because they can turn up, but I just think my peg's slightly different to Steve's. I've got this shallow water where I can put some ground bait in and hopefully I can catch some carp on that late.
Right. How do you see the match right now? I mean, where do you see yourself sitting in comparison to Steve?
It's hard to tell. I mean, I know he's had some decent fish. We've both caught quite a bit, so I honestly don't know who's winning. 2 big weights, mate. And like you said, if you have that margin kick off in the last couple of hours, it could be very, very tight. Yeah.
Right, I'll leave you to it, buddy.
Cheers, Dean.
Well done. Good luck.
Cheers.
Well, we're about halfway through the match, and there's 2 distinct things that I've noticed about both guys at the moment. Neither of them either know or want to let on where they feel like they are within the match in relation to each other. The thing is, it's not like a football game. The scores are not on the doors. We don't know where everybody lies until the weigh-in, which is in a couple of hours' time. The other thing that I've noticed is that both guys seem to be concentrating on their strength. Bagger, a little bit longer, up in the water, and when he's doing that, no one can compete with him. And Steve is definitely concentrating shorter and in the edge. And on that, he's absolutely mustard. Super, super interesting match so far.
The short pallet line gave me a brilliant start, and I was still getting an odd bite on it, but sometimes you just sense that it needs a rest. Sometimes I feel like you have to leave a few feeding fish in the swim to sort of let it regenerate. And whilst I knew that I couldn't beat Andy fishing shallow, because I just don't think anyone can beat Andy fishing shallow for F1s, I felt it allowed me to tick over, which is exactly what it did. So I went to do it my way. What I noticed with clay pit is water's really clear, the fish are really spooky at the pole. So I decided to try and fish short where I could feed by hand. That meant I didn't have to keep picking a catapult up when I was fishing against the pallet or down the edge, which can be time consuming and then lead to missed bites. So I could literally pick some casters up while I was still fishing, flick them out, then it's ready to go when I want to go shallow. So rig-wise, float choice was a 0.3 gram AR. I went for a long lash. The reason I went for a long lash is, again, water clear, easily spooked F1s. I wanted to be able to flick the rig past the feed, so my pole wasn't directly above the fish. So when I say long lash, I'm talking 24, 30 inches of line between pole float and pole tip. Main line was 0.17 N gauge. I went for a 3-inch hook length of 0.13 in the same material, size 16 Super LWG hook, tied with knotless knot with a little bait band. My shotting pattern, I had all the shot bulked under the float. This gave me the weight to flick it, because if I fished a strong bulk, basically with a long lash, you can't be very accurate when you're flicking it. So I fished with 90% of the shot right under the float. Then I had 2 number 9 cubes down the line. The first one 4 inches from the hook, and the second one inch and a half above that. The reason I had a little bit of shot down the line was just to increase the bolt effect. I always feel with carp, you can get away with no shot down the line. With F1s, a little bit shot down the line increases that bolt effect and just means you hit a few more bites. Hook bait wise, I had a little tip off. The little red pellet was deadly when there's a lot of fish there. I don't do enough F1 fishing anymore to be really fast rebaiting. Particularly when your hand gets wet, it can be very difficult to put a pellet or a caster on at any sort of speed. Well, it can for me anyway. So a little red pellet, it looks like a caster, but it's tougher, more resilient, and it allowed me to catch sort of 5, 6 fish on the same hook bait, which saves a lot. It doesn't sound like much, but it just saves time. So when there were a lot of F1s in the swim, red pellet, if they were a little bit iffy or I felt there wasn't many there, then I just switched back to a caster just to make sure I caught one. The dog's just gone in. No one likes to see that, except me maybe.
Can't believe that's just happened. Like, that sort of stuff would not happen to Ringer. So even though I've had a brilliant 4th hour shallow and I feel like I can't catch that much quicker, I still feel like I'm falling behind Steve. I'm looking over and I'm looking at the stamp of his fish, and some of them are 6 or 8 pound. So I've got to have a look in the edge just to make sure that I'm doing the right thing. So when I dropped in the edge, I caught, but the fish was sort of 3, 4 pound, 5 pound was a big one. And the speed I was taking to get them in, I feel like I could have been catching just as quick, or weight-wise, could have been catching more by fishing shallow. So what I ended up doing is, even though the edge was good, I ended up going back out on my shallow line to try and, you know, it's all about weight in a match situation. So back out there to try and put as much weight in net as possible.
Right, Andy. Yep. Championship rounds now, my friend, last hour.
Yeah.
How's the match gone up to now?
It's gone all right, to be honest, but obviously because we're fishing 2 separate matches now, it's really hard to know where I'm up to.
Yeah.
Steve's definitely catching a few better fish.
Yeah.
He's fishing short, down his edge and in front sort of thing.
We can't work it out behind the scenes, mate, and we've had eyes on both of you, and we haven't got a Scooby-Doo.
I mean, I've caught well shallow, and I've gone in the edge, I've had a couple of quick fish, but it's a bit too shallow, they're not staying there.
Yeah.
Every time I feed it, they come back, but it's like, Steve's catching so well, I can't afford to sit there and wait.
No, to be fair, you've got 2 of the best anglers on the planet doing their preferred methods. And I mean, the lake's doing well, man. Like, you're smashing it up in the water and he's smashing it in the margin. So, I mean, whether the size of his fish or your numbers are going to do it, I don't know. But I mean, you're talking about your inside, which is your second line at the moment.
Yeah.
We had Labrador Gate about 10 minutes ago, didn't we? what you're saying, because it is still murking up, but I don't know whether it's the dog that dived in.
It just it's just come from nowhere, mate. I don't know what happened. It was a big dog as well.
It was a big dog, mate, yeah.
Killed my shallow line for about 5 minutes, and then luckily to come back now, but I had a little go in that edge, like there's a fish there now.
Yeah.
I've just fed it again, put 2 more pots in just to try and get some fish back.
Right.
There's some signs down there, so I'll probably do this until it lasts 30-40 minutes, and then I'll probably try and catch a few carp late.
Yeah.
But I don't want to go on that now because I feel it'll die before the end of the match, so I'm just trying to keep putting fish in the net.
You feel you're in the mix?
I'm just trying to put pressure on Steve, like I've made him go shallow now, so
Right.
it might not be a good thing though, because he's just literally hooked one.
Yeah, but all right, buddy. Well, look, 1 hour to go, like I said. Best of luck. I
Cheers,
still think
Dino.
it's tight, buddy.
You might notice, even though I'm only fishing 10 metres, I'm feeding it with a catapult. Now, it is within throwing distance. I could quite easily throw it there, but there's a couple of reasons I do it. One is the stamina side of things. If you're doing that for 5 hours, throwing bait out your hand, it does get a little bit tiring because that is literally your limit of where you can throw. But also, it makes more noise when they hit the water. When you loose feeding by hand, it doesn't make the same noise that a catapult will. But when you need it, your hand is there also just to fill in any gaps where you may be shipping back with a fish. You can just throw some casters out there, but the catapult is predominantly used for accuracy and noise.
I've gone back on the pallet line. My idea being, shallow was okay. I ticked over, but I wasn't even holding my own against Andy. If anything, he was sort of going further ahead. So I feel like I need some more carp. Best chance of catching carp is on the pallet. But at the same time, I've just opened up my edge line. The edge, I feel, could be really, really good for me. There's plenty of cover and depth. I feel like depth's really important, particularly after practicing. I tried fishing in 2 different depths. I fished in 12 inches to my left when I practiced and 3 foot to my right with a little bit of cover. And the 3 foot with cover was ridiculously good. So bait-wise, I'm going to feed casters, maggots, bit of everything, but what I call my Bombay mix down the edge and really heavy. I'm also trying to get a little bit of bait hung up on the grass. A telltale sign of when fish come in the swim will be if I can see fish sucking on the grass or an odd swirl. It's too deep to see them feeding, as in tails. But one thing again that I learned in practice was when they do come in the swim, they come en masse. So I will be able to see them if I can throw some bait almost deliberately to get it held up where I can see it. And if I see a few carp there, I can drop in. That saves me wasting time. What I don't want to be doing is catching a few on the pallet, going down the edge for 5 minutes and not putting anything in the net. So that's the theory.
Well, Steve, has it been the perfect match? Like,
I wouldn't say, there's no such thing as the perfect match.
it ain't been bad though, has
But
it?
I've been able to fish how I wanted to fish.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I knew I couldn't beat Bennett fishing shallow.
Right.
But I knew if I could catch carp, then I could stay in the race.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel like.
I mean, you did go long. You did go up in the water to rest your inside lines for what, an hour?
Yeah, probably 45 minutes up. But I wouldn't say I matched Bennett.
No.
But at least I put some fish in the net.
Yeah.
You know, when you watch Bennett and like,
Yeah, it's different gravy.
yeah, no one can live with I've got no chance of living with that sort of pace wise.
The thing is, when you said it at the start and you was like, I can't live with him when it comes to fishing for F1s up in the water, I was thinking, hold on, I've seen you fish for the last 10 years. Like, there's not much you can't do, but actually, when you compare the two of you...
I can do it.
No, exactly.
But I just don't go like he does.
There's different levels of
If I spent
everything.
like a few months fishing with Andy,
Yeah.
then I'd get up to speed. But you can't go fishing for like F1s like once 2 days ago and then expect to live with someone who's probably the best at that type of fishing in the world, if not the country.
It's only when you see it that you realise just how quick and how efficient he is.
Oh, he's a machine. He's a well-oiled machine, and like that comes with like obviously being brilliant, and then fishing regular.
Yeah, but you say that though, mate. I'll tell you what, you said you was going to try and catch them carp on the inside, and that's exactly what you've done.
Yeah.
And I think that has been the difference, because every 3 or 4 fish you've had a big one, whereas Bennett hasn't.
Yeah, I should say, I don't know how many fish I've had, but 80% of my fish are carp.
Right.
Whereas obviously Andy's like 99% F1s.
Yeah.
So like...
What sort of weight you got now, do you reckon?
Must have over 200.
It's a good day's fishing that, isn't it?
Yeah, and I've not really had to go more than a top kit and a short 4.
No. Right. What's your plan for the last hour then?
Just keep alternating. I've had a few now on a top kit, like almost like behind me.
Yeah.
Basically alternate them 2 lines.
Right.
And just tick along. I'm going to keep feeding that just in case I need it.
Right.
But if, in an ideal match now, I'll stay there and there.
Right. All right, buddy. Right, I'm going to leave you to it. Good luck.
Cheers.
When I see a few fish in the edge, I'm able to nick 2 quick ones, not wasting any time. I'm literally going in, hooking them within like 5-10 seconds, and they're slightly bigger fish, sort of 6-7 pounders. And then as soon as I can't see anything, or I go 30 seconds without an indication in the edge, back to the pallet, and there's just fish there all the time. For the edge, float choices are 0.5 gram Mick Wilkinson margin, really strong, durable float, thick tip, 0.22 N-gauge main line, 4-inch hook length, 0.19 in the same material, size 12 XS spade, big hook, bearing in mind, great big hook bait, as in a big bunch of maggots. Shotting pattern, tightly strung bulk and number 9 cubes, bottom cube 4 inches from the hook, and literally ½ centimetre gap between them. Nice and positive, get the hook bait down really quick, because I want an instant type response. Elastic choice, red hydro. I'm fishing in between 2 platforms, and the beauty of carp is, if I was chub fishing in the edge, they'd probably all wrap me around the platform, but with carp, if you basically strike away from the bank, they follow you. So when I get a bite, strike slightly away from the bank, carp swims out between the gap, and then it's just a case of landing it.
Well, that is 5 hours of one of the most intense matches I've seen. And I know I said that twice last year, but generally they've all been like that. So, guys, all out. That is the end of match number 1 to the scorecards.
I feel absolutely shattered. Not only have you got 5 hours of hauling, so to speak, but also I've got the mental side of watching Andy pulling F1s in at a speed that I've never seen anything like shallow. So there's a mental tiredness, and then there's the tiredness of like playing carp after carp after carp, concentrating on your float, trying not to sort of be influenced by what other people are doing, etc, etc. So I'm shattered.
5 hours of fishing against Steve like that is very draining. Just literally, we both caught fish all day. Ain't got a clue what the weights will be. You know, it's not turned out the match I wanted it to be, but yeah, very draining.
With 50 minutes to go, obviously, I'd paid a dog walker a lot of money, and he sent his dog straight into Andy's swim, and that certainly slowed him down.
It was probably the size of a polar bear. It was a big dog. It jumped straight in my edge. Did it affect my peg? Probably a little bit, but you know, what's it cost me? £10, £15 maybe.
Well, ladies and gents, that is the end of the first match, and I've got to be careful here because I felt like last year, after both matches, I was saying these guys were great and it was so close and it was interesting, and if you keep paying people compliments all the time, it becomes a bit disingenuous. But I've got to say it again though, because these guys are absolutely mustard. You up in the water and you in the edge, just two of the best in the business doing what you do best, and the fish kept coming all day long. In hindsight, is there anything? Hindsight's the best match angler in the world. Is there anything you'd do different?
Well, I put all my lines in. I didn't catch enough carp. I knew carp had played a big part late on.
Yeah.
Probably in between what I've had a shallow water line, I've had a 5 foot line. Probably should have looked for something in between, maybe 3 foot, something like that. But
right.
The peg didn't really lend itself to that. So, no, I mean, I set my stall out. It didn't pay off late.
Controversy. How many fish and possibly how much weight did the Labrador cost you? I know it's hard to say, but your swim went dead for 5 minutes, didn't it?
Yeah, it took a while for it to come back. My edge, I didn't really catch in my edge, but I don't think it was a dog. I'm not using it as an excuse.
It was the dog.
£15 maybe.
15.
I was catching well shallow, but it's what it is.
Steve, what about you? I've said it a couple of times today. It seemed like a perfect match. I know it's not a perfect match, but as near as damn it.
I had a brilliant start. The only thing I'd do in hindsight, I felt like I wasted 20 minutes before I moved to the platform.
Right.
In hindsight, I'd have caught them 4 or 5 fish on a top kit and then put the short 4 on and just gone 20 minutes early.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that platform just offered me a little bit of cover. The bottom was harder.
Yeah.
It was just easier to catch there. So that's pretty much the only thing I'd do different.
It did seem like a perfect game plan at the start, and very rarely do those game plans play out, but it did look like everything you told me when we stood in your swim before you set everything up came to fruition.
Yeah, I knew I couldn't compete with Andy fishing shallow. I've never seen anyone.
Mustard.
I've never seen anyone that fast.
And I've never really seen it properly, and you said it before, oh, you can't compete with him, and when you watch him really, you just think that's a well-oiled machine.
I knew the only way I could compete with him was carp.
Yeah.
And like, when I came a couple of days ago, I spent a lot of time practicing how to catch carp.
Yeah.
And I felt like today, the swim I chose, I know Andy would have chose where he was anyway,
yeah.
but the swim I chose suited how I wanted to fish.
Well, I don't know whether it was on camera or off camera, but you said to me beforehand when we was over there, I don't really know F1s because I don't do it, but I know carp.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's get to the scores because we digress. Guys, phenomenal, okay? Andy, I don't know what you had in your mind at the start of the day, all right? And I don't know how much energy you've got left after that day, but you weighed in, I was going to say very respectable, but I think it's quite magnificent, 343 pounds, 4 ounces. Steve, I don't know what you expected at the start of the day either, but you weighed in an amazing 369 pounds, 4 ounces. So I know it sounds on the scoreboards like it was 20, 30 pound difference, but ladies and gents, that was so close.
Ridiculously close.
Ridiculous. 2 massive bags of fish.
Well done, Steve, well done.
Guys, on to the next one, but I don't know, can it get any better? You just keep pulling it out the bag. Honestly, I'm lost for words.
We won't get weights like this next time, trust me.
Mega, chaps, well done. It's been an absolute pleasure once again. I look forward to the next match.
Cheers, thank you.
Well done, Steve.
Cheers, Andy. I'm absolutely made up to beat Andy. Like, I'm 3-0 up against like probably the best commercial angler in the country. It's definitely time to retire. But I did think after I practiced, I knew I couldn't beat him on F1s. I came up with a plan for carp, and luckily for me, it paid off.
I'm a bit gutted. I feel like I've had a good weight shallow, 343 pounds. Fished my heart out. I don't think I could have caught a great deal more. Made a few slight errors, and this is what I'm saying. It's at this level you can't get caught out.
I take all my fishing very seriously, particularly like fishing on telly against Andy Bennett. If I didn't take it seriously, I wouldn't be able to compete. So like practicing to me is a no-brainer, and I honestly believe I won today because I practiced and he didn't.
2 things I'll take away from today. Number 1, when people tell you just how good Bennett is up in the water for them F1s, you'll never know until you see him in real life. Like, that guy is an absolute well-oiled machine. The best in the business. Number 2 is anyone that ever bets against Steve Ringer in any match, anywhere on the planet, needs their head sorted, because I've worked with him for 10 years and I've never seen him have a bad day. And I'm starting to wonder whether he's one of the best of all time, because I've never seen better.